Hello again, everybody, and welcome once again to my next blog entry. My name is Alan Shisco. I'm a motion graphics artist. I haven't been doing too many entries of late because, well, I've been busy. But today we're going to take a look at something. It's not actually a project that I did. In this case, I'm going to be giving you a bit of a preview of an upcoming plugin. This particular plugin is by a company called Zaxworks, which I'm sure that many of you are familiar with. They make the Invigorator plugin, Pro Animator, plus lots more. Look at that. There's the list right there. The one that we're going to look at today is still in beta. It's going to be released really soon. I would think, well, the NAB show is coming up in a few weeks, and I wonder if Zax is going to be certainly showing it, and I bet he'll be starting to sell it then as well. So, the plugin that we're going to be taking a look at today is actually a set of two plugins, and they're called 3D Grid Warp and 3D Layer Warp. So let's get started here. Over to After Effects. Now, as you know, when you create a 3D layer in After Effects, here's the comp that we're looking at here right now. I've got two 3D just solids in there for illustration purposes and a camera. And if you orbit around here a little bit, you can see that, yeah, you're in 3D space, but the objects that you've got there are basically little flat pieces of paper. There's no way in After Effects itself, in the program proper, to distort and to bend these layers so that they become something other than pieces of paper. There are a lot of tricks and there are a lot of workarounds you can do to give the illusion of full-on 3D, I guess you could say. A lot of people call this 2.5D. Right, so in the past, there has been a plugin for After Effects that I have used called Forge Freeform. Now, I'm not sure what the status of the plugin right now is, but Zax has come up with his own solution to this. And let's take a look at it here. So, first thing that I'm going to do here, I'm just going to turn off these right here, and I'm going to create a solid, and we'll call this Layer Warp, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, all this is just a plain old white solid. You don't have to make it into a 3D layer or anything like that. Just use it as it is, and I'm going to drag over from my effects palette 3D Layer Warp plugin. All right, so the first thing that you're going to see here is not too much, because my camera right now is pulled in really close. So what I'm going to do is move this back a ways, minus 1300. There we go. And I'm going to turn that down, and I'm going to make my Layer Warp plugin just in draft mode so things work a little bit quicker. We are working in 3D space, so things do slow down a little bit. But in general, I think you'll find that it's quite a fast deformation plugin. Okay, so if we look at it now, you can see that we now have a little bit of, it's no longer just a flat layer. It's now, if you look at it, kind of warped and kind of deformed. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the plugin for Layer Warp, and let's take a look at what we've got here. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do here, way up at the top, is this thing that says Show Guide Grid. Now, I find that this is really handy when you're trying to figure out where to do all your bends and deforms and all that, just so that you can get a little bit of an idea where things are bending. When you turn it on now, you can see that we're getting a bend happening here. Now, I'm not going to touch upon every element of the plugin right here. I'm just going to do a quick little tour so that you can see what can be done with this. First thing we'll open up here is Transform, and you can rotate your layer in 3D space. You can see as I'm spinning that around, look at that. It's not flat anymore. It actually bends in 3D space. That's pretty cool. And Y warp there, or Y rotation, I should say, pardon me. And you can also scale in 3D space as well. Pretty cool, eh? And as you can see, when I'm in draft mode here, I can click and drag, and I've got pretty good interactivity over in the comp window here. So there's your transforms. Further to the transforms, you can do it independently. That is, you can do the transforms just within the Layer Warp plugin, or in this case, what I've got is I've got a camera. And if I move the camera itself around, you can see that the layer is following with it. Now, at this point, I'm going to let you know what the biggest problem is. It's not really, well, I guess it is a problem with the plugin, and that is that as with the Zaxworks Invigorator and Pro Animator plugins, although you can work in the After Effects 3D workspace, you cannot yet have the layers intersecting with one another. For instance, if I turn on, I'm going to turn off my Layer Warp layer here first and turn these two on. Going to orbit around here a little bit. You can see that these two layers here are intersecting right now. If I turn on my Layer Warp layer with Zaxworks Layer Warp, there it is. But if you move around, you can see that they do not intersect one another. And that apparently, from what I can understand, is just kind of the way it is. It is too bad that you can't have this deformation here intersecting with the rest of your After Effects 3D world, because if you could do that, well, that would be extra cool. So we'll see what happens on that front. Hopefully some sort of a workaround will be developed for that. So back to it here. Turn those off. Go to my Layer Warp plugin. So quickly now, the first thing that you want to do here is you want to go to Warp 1. Now, the way that this works is you've got up to 3 warps that you can apply to any layer. Probably, generally speaking, in the course of my work, I'll only use maximum 2, so the fact that there's a third that I can apply a little more warp to just gives me a little bit more flexibility. So, Warp 1. First, what you do is you choose your warp style. I'm just going to leave it at bend from center right now, and leave it at the y-axis. Then you start playing around with the warps. Now you can see I can make a nice easy cylinder like that. And you can smooth out the warp. That actually works for when you're doing stuff like linear wave and radial wave. We'll get to that in a second. You can change where the warp is happening from. You can see I'm changing the X center and the Y center there right now. And what that means is, well, let's do a quick one here. Bend from one side. I'm going to put the warp amount right up here, just about like that. Now when I animate, if I were to animate the X center, you get, yes, the familiar, much loved, and oft understood page turn. There it is. And this is an actual 3D space, so, well, there you go. That's pretty cool and pretty quick. Now, the great thing about this is that, let's say we're doing our page turn here, and that's fine, but it looks, I don't know, it's just a flat thing that's unrolling there. What you really want to do to sell these kind of things is you want to make it look, if you want to make it look more natural, there's going to be more than one warp. So let's open up Warp 2 here. It defaults to none, and let's choose, let's see, let's do twist from center. I'm going to do that, and you can see that immediately we've got another little deform going on here. And if I go back up to my Warp 1 and change it now it sort of looks like a little bit more of an interesting deformation now. It's not just bending a flat piece of paper. You can see there's a little bit of a curve there. And it just makes it look a little bit more natural. If you wanted to add even more to it, you could go to Warp 3. Now, I'm kind of making this up as I go along, so bear with me. But I'm going to do a little bit of a linear wave. You can see that's really way too much, so I'm just going to put the warp amount down a lot here. Change the wave length, make it really long, and open up my Warp 1 again. And let's see what we got now. Now you're getting something that's looking a little bit more interesting. Well, maybe, maybe not. That's up to you to decide. But you can see that at the very least, you're able to do with, when you combine all the warps together, you can make stuff look a little more natural. In the real world, a piece of paper, it usually isn't perfectly flat. It's usually got a couple of bends or little curls or something on that. So if you play around with the different warps here, let's go to radial wave. There you go. That looks a little more interesting there. Then you can make things look a little more interesting. Now this actually, if you look at this right now, looks a lot like, let me turn this back to linear wave. And if we do wave propagation, you can see we've got, looks like a flag. And this actually ties into another one of zaxwarp's products. As many of you may know, he's got a product called 3D Flag. So basically, I guess, I'm assuming that Layer Warp is an extension of 3D Flag, and you're not just limited to doing those kind of deformations, but you can now do it on any layer. Okay. So let's warp one a little bit. I guess there's not really much more I can say about that. I mean, you choose your twist from center. You can do some really interesting extreme effects if you wanted to. You can make spheres as well while you're doing it. Oh, there we go. And we'll just turn off Warp 2 and Warp 3. Whoops, wrong one. None. Warp 3. Oops, already did that. Now you can see the one issue that I've got with this. Well, it's not an issue. There's a lot of things that you got to open up and play with. A lot of elements that you have to do to make this stuff happen. It would be nice if there was some sort of an on-screen interaction that you can have here, like if you could grab onto Bezier points and move them and all that. I'd really like to see that in further versions of 3D Layer Warp. A lot of things to drag here. Works great, but you got a lot of mousing around to get it to do what you want. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy. Let's just do a reset here. So what can you do with this now? Well, the first thing that you can do is, I've got a bunch of comps up here. Let's go to image. So this is just a pre-composition that I have that's got an image there. I'm going to grab onto, I'm just going to copy and paste from another composition that I have here. Here is the image composition. I'm going to drop it down there. You don't even have to have it turned on. Go up to the layer warp here and open up color controls. Now, one of the options that you have here when you is that you can choose which layer you want to have as your color map, which is to say what you want to appear right here. In this case, I'm going to choose image, and there we go. Now when we do our warping and everything, it's warping the actual image that we've got there. And the cool thing about that is, there we go, moving around. If you're with your client and they decide, oh, that's all fine and dandy, but I want to change all this to a different image, all you have to do is go into your pre-comp, change the image there, and it'll update automatically right here. So that'll work really well for workflow. Now, the other cool thing that you can do here, let's just make this warp map real good. You can see that we've got, basically it's a double-sided thing. You've got the image in the front here, and you've also got the image on the back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to paste another comp here, which is just it's a white solid. And I could just use a white solid, I guess, too, but, well, I didn't. And I'm going to go back up to my color controls, and for my back-facing color map, I'm going to choose white. Now you can see you've got like a piece of paper with different things printed on either side. Cool, eh? Now the other thing that you can do with all this, let's just go to my warp 1 and move that back a little bit. Another cool thing that you've got is, here's another pre-comp that I've got called just a logo. Presumably this would be a company logo of some sort or other. I'm going to copy that, move it over to my layer warp, and paste it there. Again, I'm going to leave that off. Go back to my layer warp layer here, and you've got this little thing here called displacement controls. So, actually, let's go to my color here. I'm going to change everything to none, and go to my displacement controls here, and for my displacement map, I'm going to choose logo text. That was that text that I had there. Watch what happens when I do this. There you go. You've got, it's using the RGB and the alpha, or the RG, or the G, or the B, or the alpha channels. That was a bit of a mouthful. To determine what sort of deformation you're going to get on this layer right here. So if I want to bring it up a little more, you can see that as I drag the displacement amount up, the displacement gets bigger. Now you can see that it's certainly not perfect. A lot of it depends on what the source of your grid or your displacement is. But if we move it around, you can see that you're actually getting displacement based upon, oh, there it is from the other side, displacement based upon whatever you choose. So that obviously looks pretty funny, but you can move it down there and you can get some kind of cool effects going on there. Let's just go up to full resolution here so that you can see what it looks like. Oh, that was in the wrong one. Full. There we go. So you have to play around a little bit with your sources there, but you can do displacement maps. So you could do, if you had a shot of water or something in your pre-comp, then you could get some really neat effects going on here for your displacement. Plus, of course, you can displace and warp at the same time, which is quite neat. So let's see, what else can we look at here? I guess you can choose, like I say, comp camera. You can also use comp lights as well. You can show the lights. You can use the lights here themselves if you want. Change the color here to something radical so you can see. There you go. And when you move it around, pretty cool. Now, briefly, let's take a look at the second plugin that's going to be offered with this. The other one is called Grid Warp. And Grid Warp is very similar in many ways to Layer Warp, except you've got a few more controls. like for instance up here, you can basically you apply it to a solid, and you can uh, um, choose how much of the top and bottom you want, and that's the shape controls is what we're looking at. You've also got the same transform controls that we had in the other one, pretty much, and then you got the line controls. So here's where you can create different kind of grids. You can also do radial grids as well, radio squares, radio triangles, that kind of thing. And what I would use this for is, well, let's just change all the colors here to whites. There we go. Actually, we don't want to change that one. And I'm just going to choose here wireframe. Now, what you could do with this is you could make some really cool, interesting textures that are 3D that would work in your After Effects 3D comp. Open this up. I'm going to take twist. Where are we here? Twist from center. Make that quite a lot more. And I'm going to add a second warp to it. Let's do twist from center again, but change this to Z-axis. Actually, that's not working. Y-axis. Yeah, there we go. X might be a little more interesting. There we go. And all of a sudden, you can make some really cool looking. Let's go back to the line controls, line width. You can make some really cool looking camera. You can orbit around here a little bit. I'm just going to go down to draft resolution, just like so. Whoops, yeah, I can't do that because that'll show that. If I go down to quarter, you can see you can make some really cool, interesting environments in After Effects. If you wanted to do like some 3D spaces, put some text on there while we're at it. Whoops. Hello. Make this into a 3D layer. I'm just going to make the size of that a little bit smaller. Move that over. Now you can see when we orbit around, you can do some really cool stuff with the textures that you can create using grid warp and put your the 3D elements of your After Effects project in there. You got some really nice looking stuff. So that, in a nutshell, is really quick, really fast tour of the upcoming products coming out of Zaxworks. Let's go back here. There we go. Zaxworks, zaxworks.com. This stuff is really cool. I've been playing with it on a couple of little projects, and it really adds another element to your After Effects project. Let's go over to right there. On my blog itself, there's a link to this little clip here, and you can see that I've used the Zaxworks plugins to bring in a lot these layers here, and it just adds another different element, takes it that one step further that makes things look a lot better. So there you go. My name again is Alan Shisco. Effector.ca is my website address, and I hope that everybody had a good time taking a look at the new stuff coming up from Zaxworks.